called High Voltage Rock and Roll.
Everyone, and welcome to the Boogie Mama Riffs. Today we're going to be doing AC/DC High Voltage review, and as we did last time, so many of you requested it that we're going to do another review as we did Dirty Deeds, Australian Dirty Deeds versus American Dirty Deeds. Now we're going to be doing Australian High Voltage versus American High Voltage. Now, one of the things I liked about both of these albums is just the rawness of it, and I believe that, in my humble opinion, I literally just listened to it 5 minutes ago. This is Bon Scott at his best, in my opinion. If you listen to songs like Rock and Roll Singer, like Bon Scott, he was just hitting it out of the park, as we say. Like this, in my opinion, as humble as it is, this is Bon Scott at the top of his game as a vocalist. He came in from fraternity and joined AC/DC, and apparently out of all the books, sorry it's super cold here, out of all these books that I've read about AC/DC, apparently when Bon went to join AC/DC, Vince Lovegrove, who Bon was playing a band with called Valentines, Vince Lovegrove, I think from memory, was some sort of photographer or editor or producer or something like that, and Vince Lovegrove actually recommended Bon Scott to have an audition for AC/DC. And you know, Angus was pretty young at that stage. I think he was like 16 or 17, and for some reason, spoiler alert, they said in some of the advertising that Angus Young was really actually 15 or 16 when he first started playing AC/DC, so he could connect with the younger audience, schoolboys or whatever. But hard to believe, a schoolboy that is 17 or whatever, but 18. But AC/DC had Bon come, not so much audition. I wasn't there. From what I heard though, Vince Lovegrove said, you should get Bon sing for you, if you're looking for a good singer. And they go, oh, he's a bit old, isn't he? And Vince Lovegrove said, mate, this guy will rock the asses off you guys. So you can imagine Bon, as I said, had a lot to prove on the first Australian AC/DC album and the second the same album, AC/DC, but the Atlantic American version. And Bon had a lot to prove. He went from fraternity to playing in AC/DC, and which ended up being one of the world's biggest selling bands. And I really believe that Bon I wouldn't say, and I don't want to say this, that Angus and Malcolm rode on Bon's coattails, into success there, but it was just amazing how Bon came along with all his experience from fraternity, whereas he wasn't able to write any lyrics in fraternity, Bon. And I know this is supposed to be High Voltage review, but Bon, before he came to AC/DC, was in a band called Fraternity from Australia, and they didn't allow him to do any. They let him sing, obviously, but they didn't let him write any of the lyrics. So Bon was always writing all these notes, and some people call him a bathroom poet, or as we call him here in Australia, a dunny poet. But to me, Bon really, he had some really cool lyrics, and he hit the ground running when he landed with AC/DC, because in fraternity they taught him how to engage not only the people in the front row but the back row of the audience. And let's get into the AC/DC albums now. AC/DC brought out High Voltage, the Australian version, in 1974, and there were actually a few different people who played on this album. George Young played bass, at a side for Bon, Angus and Malcolm Young. They were all on the album, obviously. Phil Rudd didn't join by then, and in the Australian version, Mark Evans hadn't joined then. It was just Bon, Angus and Mal, and there was also Colin Burgess, as far as I know, was the first official drummer of AC/DC, and then while Dave Evans was still singing, and then they also had another drummer called Peter Clack, who was on the video for High Voltage. You gotta understand, these guys, Angus and Malcolm, had the backing of Albert Production, and they had the experience of Vander and Young. George Young, their older brother, and Harry Vander from the Easy Beats come in on board and just really take AC/DC. You know, that's a pretty good head start for a band to be able to have the Easy Beats as your mentors and producers and, one could say, engineers in the studio. And then Bon came on board with Angus and Malcolm, and then they recruited other different musicians, as I've said before in previous videos, and they brought out their first album, High Voltage Australian version, and that's the red one. And to me, I remember my cousin, he said to me, and by the way, if I'm going over time, apologies, because I was watching the clock here, and I literally just realised the clock had stopped while I'm filming this. So I thought, wow, time is going slow. So time is going slow because the clock has stopped. Anyways, they bought out the first AC/DC album, High Voltage, and it had songs like Baby Please Don't Go, She's Got Balls, Little Lover, Stick Around, You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, and Show Business, songs like that. Fun fact here on Boogie Mama Riffs that some of you may or may not know is that Malcolm Young, Angus's brother, who is known for playing his Gretsch rhythm guitar. Gretsch is Gretsch is a brand of guitar. Malcolm Young is known for playing rhythm guitar and Angus playing lead. But in the first album, the first High Voltage album, Malcolm Young actually played a fair amount of lead guitar. Fun fact that not many of you may know, that Malcolm Young actually played lead guitar on the first AC/DC album. Songs like Show Business, and if you have the new AC/DC Plug Me In, or not new anymore, the AC/DC DVD set called Plug Me In some of those rare videos you'll actually see in Show Business Malcolm Young playing guitar. And I have a hunch, forgive me if I'm wrong, that you can say it in the comments if I'm wrong, that Malcolm Young also played lead in You Ain't Got a Hold on Me and songs like Stick Around. So, and I remember someone, I think it was Dave Evans, the original singer of AC/DC, said that he missed Malcolm Young's lead because some of it, Can I Sit Next to You Girl, was another song that Malcolm Young played lead on. If you see the first AC/DC clip ever, and now Malcolm was playing lead guitar on Can I Sit Next to You Girl, the first ever Australian video. So if you watch that, you'll see what I mean. And getting on to the American version, what happened is AC/DC went from Australia to England, then from England to America, and they had a deal with Atlantic Records. And as far as I know, on the condition that they made a combination of the first two AC/DC albums. So they brought out AC/DC, obviously, High Voltage, and AC/DC TNT. And I remember there was a countdown interview with Molly Meldrum. I think it was Ian Meldrum, who said that he was interviewing AC/DC before they went over to England, and Malcolm Young said, yeah, it's a combination of the two albums, High Voltage and TNT, on the one album. And it really is. The only thing is they dropped two songs off the TNT album, which was School Days and Rocker. They dropped those songs off, and the two songs they kept from High Voltage were She's Got Balls and Little Lover. They kept those they were the only two they kept from the original High Voltage album, and they snuck those in on the American High Voltage. So they were taken off TNT album. So there is no American AC/DC TNT album. So there's another thing, I'm not sure if I mentioned, there were other people playing on this first album. Tony Correnti was one of the drummers, and Peter Clack was one of the drummers as well. And also, fun fact on Boogie Mama Riffs, George Young was playing bass on one of the songs. I believe it was High Voltage. It was one of the songs that George Young actually played bass on. And so I try to do things a little bit different tonight. I know my clock has stopped and I have no idea how long this is. I'm trying to wrap it up now. But one of the things is I wanted to do something different tonight, a review on AC/DC High Voltage, the Australian one versus the American one. And in my opinion, if I was going to choose one of the albums, and it's really hard, like one of my other YouTubers, Ralph Vera, says, oh, that one hurts when you're trying to pick one song from another or one album for another. But I remember AC/DC High Voltage, when the first AC/DC song I ever heard was TNT, and that's on AC/DC High Voltage, but in Australia here it was on TNT, the album. And my cousin, we were driving around this old Holden in Australia, and my cousin drove really fast and played super loud TNT, and it was like bam, 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 oi, and then oi. And I just thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. So that's how I was introduced to AC/DC by one cousin, and then another cousin said to me, he didn't say to me, he just had the most ridiculous record collection. He was kind of richer than I was, my folks were, and he gave me all these AC/DC albums, and I said to him, which one is the worst AC/DC album you reckon? He said, probably High Voltage, because that's the first one they did. I said, really? And so I ended up, back in high school, I bought AC/DC High Voltage album. It wasn't the first one I bought, I don't think. I bought TNT, and I'm not sure what, and then AC/DC High Voltage. And I brought it home when I was still in high school, and I listened to it, and I heard it started with Baby Please Don't Go, and songs like She's Got Balls. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure who was playing drums on that. It definitely wasn't Phil Rudd, but the way in She's Got Balls, in that second song, it was going... She's got balls. Apparently Bon Scott wrote that song because his wife at the time, I'm presuming it was Irene, said, Bon, you've never written a song about me. So he wrote a song called She's Got Balls, and then she divorced him. Well, that's what the story is. Anyway, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to hear about these two albums, but this is just my take on it. I was going to do a track by track like I did with Dirty Deeds, but I just thought I'd do something different tonight. So I hope you enjoyed this. We're going to be bringing something awesome to you next time. I can't wait to bring you a new video, and keep watching Boogie Mama Riffs and Reviews, and please like and subscribe and comment if there's something else you want us to do, other bands. We have some other bands coming to mix things up. So remember, this is Boogie Mama Riffs, and we're rocking for you.